Hi, everybody. Eric Parker here. This is the Valley of Death. You have now entered the discussion about what it's like for a startup to navigate the challenges that they inevitably face when they are trying to do something that's different, something amazing where the founders are pushing the boundaries of their past experiences and trying to really revolutionize something new. And first off, before I really get into things, I want to thank everybody who reached out after episode 1. It was very touching to see the concern that people had. I think that speaks a lot to how we often gloss over the challenges that founders are facing when they get their business started. But I wanted to be sure that I remind everybody that, one, we're in business. So Make Startups, Co-Founder OS, we are doing our thing, but we are definitely facing some challenges right now. And what I wanted to do was focus this podcast on the conversation around those challenges in the hopes that it helps other people get through them. And last time I really let everybody into sort of the pain that we were dealing with, knowing that we weren't getting paid for the month, that because of some of the challenges that we're facing, that we had to let people go and what that's like. And today I really want to focus on really what is that triage process for a startup. And before I get into that, just to remind everybody, this is going to be a daily conversation. So, do me a favor, go ahead and follow us, whether that's on YouTube or on any major podcasting platform. So Spotify, Apple, etc. We're on all of them right now, getting pushed out under Valley of Death. But and then the other thing I would love for you to do is, if I'm going to talk every day about what we're going through, I think that, let's be honest, after a week or two, I'm probably going to start rehashing some different things. A lot of it will be progress update related and whatnot, but would love your comments so that if you have any questions that you would like me to address here, feel free to make this participatory so that I can try to answer some things that might be on your mind, and maybe hearing a little bit about your challenges and talking through those might also help me get through ours. But anyway, back to the idea of startup triage, and I think that there's really a couple things that I want to focus on there, and that when you enter the Valley of Death, I think that there can be a desire to really Monday morning quarterback everything that's going on related to your business, and there's a piece of that that's important. But I think that what you really have to immediately do is look at what is the core challenge that you have to overcome to get out of the Valley of Death. And I would make the argument that 9 times out of 10 underneath it all, it's a cash flow issue, right? So every business is really centered around the idea that there's like these inputs that are coming in. So you have money coming in the door. And so that can be a recurring revenue item that you've sold. And so you just provide that every month. And so, you can count on it. It can be a one-time revenue piece. So maybe you signed a big contract that provides some great runway capital. But maybe it doesn't provide ongoing recurring revenue. Maybe a contract is a blend of those two. But then the other thing is, okay, so there's not necessarily a contract in place, a license, whatever it is that you happen to be selling. And so then your other pathway is going out and raising money for your business. I don't think that raising money for your business is the right thing to do when you're in the Valley of Death. And I'll kind of briefly say why. It's if you've ever heard anyone talk about, when's the best time to raise money, it's when you have money, when you don't need it. I think that every investor can smell the the desperation that might be there in that moment. They know that things aren't necessarily working in the way that you want them to be working, and as a byproduct of that, any money that you get is going to be very expensive. From a lending perspective, I think it's probably even more challenging, right? Because lending follows a lot different criteria that's much more regulated, and they're going to be specifically looking at, can you service the debt that you're signing up for? And if you're in the valley of death, that means that your expenses outweigh your revenues, and so you don't have a pathway to recover that. And so I think it's really important when you get into this situation to quickly look at what are the actionable things that you can do to fix revenue in your business. And that can be some larger one-time contracts. It can be recurring revenue contracts. And ultimately, recurring revenue is the healthy thing for your business. But in the valley of death, I think that trying to execute on some larger agreements is also probably a really healthy way to satisfy that. So then, how do you really go about this? Because you have to prioritize. I went through the process, I guess about 2 weeks ago, of just documenting out for myself every prospect that we have as a company right now that I feel we can close a deal with in the next 6 weeks at the time. So basically by the end of the year. So I think you have to stop looking at this stage at long-term, longer term strategies. What are the things that are going to play out over 6 to 9 months? And it's like one of the things that we discovered is our sales cycle for what we do is just fundamentally long, right? There's some support organizations that we can work with, and they're going to want to do something kind of like right away, but you have to hit them at exactly the right moment. But most of the time you're dealing with a larger institution, and they're going to have basically, their own institutional processes that make it so that purchasing something can't happen right away. And the larger the institution, the larger those processes are. And ultimately, those larger institutions result in more and more significant contract amounts. So that's a lot of sort of talking around the issue. What I had discovered in my own process is that I was tracking probably about 200 leads overall in what we were doing. And what I found was when I'm tracking 200 leads, I just am not very effective at following up with them. I was falling into this trap of like, oh, I gotta, make sure that I'm working on payroll, and I gotta make sure that I'm working on a fundraise, and I gotta make sure that I'm working on the product. And then, the customers that we do have, I have to make sure that I'm following up with them to do customer support, training, onboarding, those types of things. And so then 200 leads, I was like, man, I don't even know where to start with these 200 leads. And I think the way you have to go about it is just, at least take some time with that group of 200 and say, okay, who has been somewhat responsive to my messaging? And out of those, how do I feel about my ability to really follow through with them in the way that shows them that their business matters to me, it matters to my company, in a way that they know they can have the confidence that we're actually going to, take great care of them and deliver on the things that we promise. And I think, I really got it down to, I say 24 customers that I have a relationship with, that I have had multiple conversations along the way, that they know my intent underneath everything. They know that I'm trying to help them. And they probably have a good idea of how our software and our credentialing processes can open up resources and improve processes and outcomes for them. But for whatever reason, there's this sort of there's a legacy of everything that they have invested in to get to where they are that works, right? Like I think I told you in the last episode that, as a support organization, like this is not easy work. This is trailblazing work in our economy. And so for the most part, there are not tools that are custom designed for this. You've got a real hodgepodge that people have put together between their Google Sheets, their Airtable, their Zapiers, getting whether it's Monday or Salesforce or something like that. And they're trying to figure out how they make all these systems talk to one another. And none of those systems are really designed for the type of work specifically that they're doing. I mean, on top of it, they probably have a learning management system, a community management system. Like there's an overwhelming array of software tools that companies have to use, and maybe I'll pull it back from that, not companies, but the individual people that are trying to solve this problem that they have to use. And so there's an inertia that has to be overcome to say, okay, is it worth it for me to quit doing the things that are at least to some degree working so that I can operate my business, and go into this other thing, take this risk, take this leap to do something that might actually result in better outcomes for me, that might save me time, that might help me make more money. But it's a new product. I don't know. How am I gonna believe that this is worth the risk? Because I'm already, not exactly, making millions over here doing entrepreneur support work, right? It's a challenge. And so that's the inertia that has to be overcome. And we talk about it with our entrepreneurs all the time of like, hey, you have to do this customer discovery process. You have to find out what's the pain point. You got to make sure that the pain's not just, important, but it has to be this urgent level of pain that they have to address. And so the only way you can sort of quickly grow a customer base is to have really honed in on that like exact small thing that everybody views as the linchpin underneath like why they're not succeeding. And my God, like that's an art form, right? That's why some companies get to be worth billions and trillions of dollars at this point, because they've found those things and they've scaled those things and they've grown those things and they bolted on product after product after product to it. Now, in our case, again, that's what we're struggling against. And so the only thing that we really, really have is our relationships with these individual people. They know our intent. They know that we hope we can solve this problem for them, but do they believe we can? And I think that underneath it all, as a founder, your diligence in following through with people is the one thing that you really have to establish trust with them, right? And business is just like at its core, it's an exchange of trust for money. And I know that sounds like sort of crass and transactional, right? But people spend money when they trust that something is going to do something for them. And if that thing is new, if that thing requires them to make changes, then you have a lot to overcome to create that trust factor with them. And if you don't reply to a freaking email about it, then what does that say about your product? What does that say about your willingness to go the extra mile to make sure that other people can succeed? And I think at a certain stage as a business, maybe you can do that with 200 people simultaneously. But when you're figuring it out yourself, you probably need to start with a couple of dozen. And that's where I'm at right now. I've made my list. Every Friday, I review the progress for each person on that list. Have I followed up with them? Have they responded? What do I need to do next week? And so that's what I'm following. Ultimately, within that, I'm tracking a couple $1 million worth of business that theoretically I could close over the next, 4 to 6 weeks, in which case we're off to the races. Woo! Realistically, there's some $1 million plus deals in there, and making those happen, I am not going to be naive enough to think that those are going to happen in a 4 to 6 week time period. But with all of the more grassroots level relationships that we've been building, I guess what I've set a target for myself that I want to see if I can close $100,000 worth of business by the new year. It's a lofty goal. If I do that, if I close $100,000 in new business over the next 4 weeks and change, we will be in a much better position as a company. I don't need to close that much so that we can start getting paid again. But closing that much would start to give us some legitimate runway as we move forward. And, when I talk about that, that's going to be a mix of some smaller contracts where it might be $100 to $500 a month of revenue. And honestly, I love those relationships. Those are exactly the kind of support organizations that are just like us when we were getting started in this, when we were figuring it all out. And then moving up to ones that might sign, a 5-figure agreement that can help us to, maybe we're going ahead and getting them to work with us for a full year. With that, maybe we're getting some recurring revenue. Who knows exactly? There's some different variety in what each one of these are. To make them happen, I have a lot of standardization of agreements and just sort of information that I can kick out the door really quick. I think I need to do another episode where I really just talk about how you streamline your process so that you can follow up with people. And it'll be an interesting one because kind of been struggling with that one for most of my career. I've always imagined that I do things that have a bespoke nature to them, and so that's always, it's like maybe I've always been, as an architect, a little bit too fascinated with the art underneath what I'm doing and how to make the perfect thing, as opposed to making the thing that just that works, that gets the job done. I don't know. I'll march my way through that. We've got a lot of conversations to have together. So anyway, I hope this helps. I hope you are reassured that the sky is not falling for my business. And I just really look forward to having this conversation every day. You're giving me, by listening, a little bit of accountability underneath my actions as well. I won't lie. That's going to be helpful. Documenting this in public sort of forces my hand that I have to I can't bullshit this one because, it's out there for posterity. So let me know what questions you have. Leave a comment. Make sure you follow, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy.